Have you ever watched a movie and thought, I wouldn't mind living in that universe? I had that thought when I recently rewatched the 2013 movie Her, a love story set in the near future. A near future we kind of have caught up to 13 years later, which made for a very interesting viewing experience, especially because it was so different from the time I watched it back in May 2014. And those differences stuck with me so much that I felt like making a video about it. A more casual, laid-back one. Wait, let me reflect that with the set design actually. Ah yes, much better. No more classroom, no more learning. Just a whimsical video talking about how much our world sucks now. Just like 80% of YouTube videos these days. The dystopian elements in Her almost feel quaint in 2026. Their world feels a lot nicer to our own reality. Of course, there are some who would argue Her isn't a dystopian movie. But I'd argue that there is an inherent dystopian element to the genre of science fiction as a whole, as it usually explores the hubris of mankind. A thought-provoking warning, as if to say, this could be us one day if we're not careful. So while Her wasn't necessarily trying to be dystopian or try to predict the future or whatever, now that large language models, deep learning and generative AI are here to stay, I want to compare our reality in 2026 to the fictional sci-fi universe of the movie Her, and why I would swap to that universe in a heartbeat. The film opens on a close-up of our protagonist Theodore, seemingly writing a love letter to his partner, until he says the following.
I can't believe it's already been 50 years since you married me.
That's odd. The bizarreness you feel as a viewer then gets confirmed when he says,
You make me feel like the girl I was when you first turned on the lights and woke me up.
Okay, so either our protagonist is a trans man who aged ridiculously well, or this is it's a job. That makes sense. Wait, Theodore has a job? We're barely a minute into the movie and I'm already experiencing a big fracture with how this scene is supposed to make you feel. The way this scene is set up, showing Theodore in this extreme close-up, seemingly preparing this beautiful little speech to a loved one, only to find out it's fake, it's setting the viewer up to feel betrayed. That the sentiment he's expressing is manufactured. The scene is deliberately tricking you at the start, so you feel how impersonal the beautifully handwritten letters.com, an oxymoron in itself, business is. Unfortunately, that's no longer how it comes across in 2026. No, my experience was very different from how it was 12 years ago. My first response was, oh, how nice that a human is still writing these letters for you, instead of generative AI. We're in hell. We are literally in hell. A scene that a little over a decade ago perfectly encapsulated how disconnected we are from each other, our most loved ones even, that we do not take the time to write something from the heart, made me happy. Because at least there was some human connection still. That's sad, you guys. And when Theo clocks out for the day, his colleague Paul calls out to him and says,
Theodore, letter writer number 612.
Again, this most likely was to evoke some sense of how Theodore is just a number. Insignificant. That over 600 people write these personal letters for people they don't even know and about relationships they don't care about. 2026 me thought, wow, there are over 600 people writing letters for this company? That's amazing! That's 600 people whose job didn't get overtaken by AI. In our reality, Theodore would have been fired by now. Side note, but I love it when opening shots hit to the core of what the movie is going to be about. We're physically close to Theodore, but he's not looking at us. He's not making human contact. He's talking to a computer. It's impersonal, it's disconnected. And yet the job itself suggests the need for human connection. Which is the tension this movie plays with throughout its runtime. Just from this opening shot, you can distill what the ethos of this movie is going to... Wait, how did we get back into the classroom? That's weird. Let me change that real quick. On to the next big difference. I think it's so adorable that the movie is speaking in terms of OSs, operating systems, with a little number behind it. OS 1, the newest technology. It tells me that at the time we were still very much dominated by Apple products and how much focus there was on the newest version and what features it had. Theodore enters I would hesitate to call this a store, because there are no employees, just these dispensaries. But it is a physical location he goes to, he doesn't order it online. And guys, here's the crazy part. He buys the thing, and then he owns it. No subscriptions, no app, no add-ons. It's just a product he buys. I nearly fell off my chair. And then he goes home and he installs it on his computer. How nice! Me too, please. I want that. Can we please go back to that instead of these endless godforsaken monthly subscription services? If these techno-feudalists were allowed to reinvent the world, they would find a way to monetize the sun. Anyway, he installs the OS 1 on his computer, cute, which then also is immediately linked to his earpiece, his little screen pad that's the last remnant of a smartphone, and also his work PC. That one took me by surprise actually. Early on, his OS even edits his letters.
Oh, can you check these for spelling and grammar?
Wait, your job is speech to text. I understand correcting for sentence structure, but how can there be spelling mistakes? Unless the speech to text program sucks. Which it appears it does, because on screen you see common mistakes like you are instead of your. Putting that to the side, he gets help from a sentient OS named Samantha, which is a topic we're putting a pin in for now, and we'll come back to her in a little bit. For now, let's go to the part in the movie where I actually prefer our reality. I do not want to play video games like this. Listen, at first glance, this looks cool as hell, and it totally sells the near futuristic aesthetic the movie is going for. It has 6 projectors to the side that creates this 3D field that is controlled by hand motions. This setup Theodore has embodies what it would be like if the gaming industry further developed the technology around the Kinect. But this is where my objection starts, because we don't see any motion sensors on Theodore's person. Does this mean there's a camera pointing at him at all times to register his movements? That would mean it is constantly recording you. Yikes! But my biggest issue with it is even more practical than that. It's the lack of a controller. Just look at this awkward hand motion Theo has to do to indicate his avatar is walking. I did it to test it out, and it sucked. You should try it too and see how long you can keep it up before your hands get tired and your mind gets absolutely bored. It took me about 10 seconds before I wanted to stop. I can't imagine it's comfortable gaming like this for several hours at a time. Let alone when you have to fight a boss and have to swing a sword or pretend to drink a potion or whatever. It can't even really distinguish inputs. When Theodore is eating, his little avatar does a similar motion like he's eating something. There's a reason why a controller or keyboard is still so popular. Because for continuous input, you just have to hold a key or button. You don't have to exert your body as much. Do I still think this is a better alternative to VR? Yes I do. You will not get motion sickness from this or need massive headgear to play a game. Huge downsides to the vast human population, of whom 4 billion have to wear glasses. So yeah, I'm cool with the whole 3D projected space of it all, but for the love of God, just give me a controller. Another huge plus for the horror universe: there's no social media. People are still communicating through emails. How quaint!
Email from Amy. Hey Theodore, Lumen's having a bunch of people over this weekend.
Give me a world where there's cool technology but no social media anytime. There's no algorithm trying to push you towards extremes just so you will use the app longer. There's no rage bait content, seemingly no gig economy, no wild conspiracies, and no influencers. We don't even know who the CEO is of the company who makes that revolutionary OS. I want to not know CEOs of big companies. Why do they all need to act like celebrities these days? Why are you on my screen? Why do you have so much economic and political influence? Fuck off! Not to mention that the movie takes less than 10 seconds to show the geopolitical situation of the Her universe. Theo is commuting back home, and his OS is reading headlines. And he just shifts through them.
China-India merger headed for regulatory approval in...
Next.
Like it's nothing. Next. Oh, to live in a world where the news is something you can just skip through without it raising your blood pressure and taking months off of your life one headline at a time. Even little details come to mind, like how Theodore uses a simple safety pin in his pocket square. That way he can prop up his little mini iPhone and it's like he's taking Samantha with him on an outing. You just know that in our timeline, either some influencer would have made a side hustle making that into a fancy gadget, or Apple would have made that as an add-on to the OS 1 product for like $200 somehow. There's a certain predatory element missing from the technology in this movie, and it's a breath of fresh air. Speaking of air, Los Angeles is a walkable city that has proper public transport. No more car dependency. This movie has spoken, and the future is viable alternatives to driving. I mean, I live in the Netherlands. I've lived in walkable neighborhoods and enjoyed good public transport all my life. Subscribe to Not Just Bikes, get orange pilled. But I want that for the rest of the world too. So to see that kind of future for LA, yeah, love that. Love that Theo's walking to places, using the metro, the train to go on holiday. And it's not to showcase he's poor or anything. He has a really nice and spacious apartment, can afford this gaming equipment that even in this universe seems like it's pretty new gear. Halfway through the movie, we see him beta testing a game his friend Amy is working on. And that happens on a regular screen with a tablet as a controller. To sum up, the Her universe has companies that employ humans instead of AI, does not have an economy run on monthly subscriptions, gig employment and grifting, turned LA into a walkable city, has good public transport options in the United States, a cool albeit wonky gaming system that's easily fixable with a controller, no geopolitical turmoil, and no social media. Lead us to the promised land, big moustache Joaquin Phoenix. We are desperate. Okay, don't get mad, but I did bury the lead a little bit. There are aspects of how technology is used in this movie, and in particular how the OS behaves, that ring so many alarm bells in my head. So that's what we're going to discuss next. Just to give you some context, in the universe of Her, technology is leaning towards voice operated instead of screen operated. Everybody talks to their phone through this earbud. We start out with an OS which is very robotic, and the commands Theodore gives it are very robotic in return. Read emails, next, delete, 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 respond later. Then he buys this new OS, an artificially intelligent OS, who can do an equivalent of what we would call deep learning today. The OS, Samantha, calls it intuition and the ability to grow from her experiences. The key difference is that Samantha acts much more human than the previous model. At one point she even pokes fun at Theodore for addressing her the same way he would his old OS.
Read email.
Okay, I will read email for Theodore calmly.
Speaking of emails, basically the first thing Samantha does is go through Theodore's entire hard drive to help him organize. She goes through his emails in a second. Over 1,000 of them are from his old workplace. Pieces of writing he wrote which he saved because maybe he wrote something funny.
Yeah, there are some funny ones. I'd say there are about 86 that we should save. We can delete the rest.
Dude! Who are you to decide which ones are his best work? That's highly subjective, and more importantly, not for you to decide. I'm not even kidding when I say it's genuinely dangerous to be giving that kind of autonomy to an AI. you're essentially giving away your own agency to a robot, which is nothing to say of the amount of personal data Theodore gives to his OS in the blink of an eye. Which got me thinking. We started to be aware of massive data collection and privacy breaches around this time, right? I mean that painfully awkward US Congress hearing with Mark Zuckerberg. It must have been around 2013, right? Nope! Somehow that was 2018. How? How has it only been 8 years, and why does it feel like it's been 2 decades instead? There is zero awareness or even acknowledgement of how Theodore's data is being protected in this entire film. Which I don't think is a fault of the movie necessarily, just a reflection of the time period this was produced. I can't believe we were once this naive about the technology and the companies behind them. Watching this, I got so worried for Theodore's privacy and data so many times. Samantha knows everything about Theo. Remember when I said how cute it was that Theodore has a little safety pin so he could go on a little outing with Samantha? Yeah, I conveniently left out the fact that I was screaming at my screen because he is filming all these people without their knowledge or consent. And this is the first time we've seen Theodore carefree and happy in the present day. You want the guy to be happy. And Samantha feels very human, so it's like he's taking his long-distance girlfriend out on a date. But at every turn, I'm like, what's happening to his data? Is Theodore protected? Are there audio files stored in the cloud somewhere of their phone sex? This movie does not care about the privacy issue at all. You can argue that it's because in this universe, the data is encrypted on the user's end, or that the company isn't collecting users' data at all. But I'm in the hell timeline, so I don't trust that. Especially when Samantha starts saying stuff like this.
Can I watch you sleep again tonight?
No! Even if we follow the logic that Samantha is sentient and her own person, the company that created her might be watching alongside her. Don't show them when you're literally at your most vulnerable. The reason why I can't fully buy into the his data is safe argument is because of this little surprise Samantha has for Theodore.
Well, I've been going through all of your old letters and compiling them down into my favorites, and a couple weeks ago I sent them to a publisher.
Pause. You did fucking what? Just to break this down, Samantha compiled her favorite letters, sent them without Theodore's consent to a publisher who wants to publish it. Forget being an AI. If someone I love would do this with my writing behind my back, I honestly don't know if I could forgive them, because that's not their decision to make. It's my writing. There's a difference between motivating someone you love to get out there and taking away their autonomy. It would be a completely different story if Samantha had compiled a collection together with Theodore, kept his final approval, and then sent it to the publisher. But that's not what she did. She went ahead and asked for permission later, which is a shitty thing to do. But here's the other massive flaw. It might be Theodore who wrote those letters, but he wrote those on company time. For real people with real lives who wanted to send a personal letter to someone they love. I don't think they like their private conversations to be published for the world to see, Samantha. I don't care how sensitive and gorgeous his writing is, you're monetizing someone else's private life. Where is their autonomy? Because I really doubt you emailed all those people and asked for their consent, given you didn't even have the decency to show that minimum level of respect to Theodore, a man you supposedly love. Honestly, this whole scene is a clusterfuck of transgressions and the movie does not give a damn. What Samantha did gets celebrated. You know what Theodore says?
Samantha, you're a good one.
What is wrong with you? If I was Theodore, I would have ripped out that earpiece and broken up with Samantha on the spot. Speaking of her, it's time to unpin the Samantha of it all. At the start of this movie, Samantha, an AI, only has humans to mirror herself to. Naturally, she starts to compare herself towards them, and while there are many similarities, like the desire to keep evolving, there are obvious differences too, like the lack of a body. It's the source of Samantha's biggest insecurity. She comments on the weirdness of bodies, but simultaneously feels like an inadequate partner to Theodore without one. Only as the movie progresses does she see the benefits of not having a body. And that's also the moment she starts to become less human-like and walk down the path of becoming an artificial superintelligence. Here's the thing though. Compared to how generative AI functions in our lives, Samantha feels beyond what AI will ever be. For example, have you ever given ChatGPT a prompt and then got creeped out by how over-the-top accommodating and complimentary it is towards you, no matter how small or insignificant your inquiry was? Yeah, I don't think that's ever going to go away. AI is a product. It's always going to stay agreeable to a fault as long as monetary gain is the end goal. Companies don't want to be held liable if the AI makes a mistake, or have an AI be rude enough to make the experience more human-like and lose customers in the process. And companies certainly don't want to get sued because someone's AI girlfriend decided to break up with him. Sure, tech dudes can make large language models more accurate and less likely to pull you down a conspiracy. It can simulate a human conversation pretty well. But it can never fully replace it because it's not human, no matter how badly those tech dudes want it to be. Because as a human being, you have autonomy, you have free will. Generative AI does not have free will because it's still tied to a company. It's still trying to make money, profit off of you with either a monthly subscription service or by selling your personal data. That's not Samantha. She has autonomy. She calls Theodore out on his crap like a human would. She expresses wants and desire. She gets upset with him and even has the ability to disappear after a fight, despite Theodore wanting to continue the conversation. In that sense, Samantha feels more like Theodore's long-distance girlfriend, someone he speaks through on voice chat and shares his day with. The only times we really get into robot territory is when Samantha expresses the desire to have a body. At one point she tells Theodore she wants to use the service of a surrogate partner, and she's very adamant about it. And I'm fascinated by the scene in a way the movie, once again, does not care about. Which is fine. The movie is telling its own story and that's a good thing. But what I find so fascinating is that this body double really freaks Theodore out, and he keeps repeating it doesn't feel right. But like, that's you, baby girl. You're the Isabella in so many relationships because of your job, except you provide emotional intimacy instead of bodily intimacy. Theodore writes incredibly personal messages between people. At one point he mentions that he's been writing for a couple for 8 years. He remembers details like a crooked tooth that is nowhere mentioned in the current prompt. Whether you like it or not, you're part of their relationship on a level nobody else is. You are the third, the emotional body double, Theodore. The only reason it doesn't seem to have come across your thick, melancholy skull is because you are not with these people physically.
They're just letters.
What's that?
They're just other people's letters.
I'm also endlessly fascinated by the scene between Catherine and Theodore. For one, because she reads him for filth in a way only people closest to you can.
I've always wanted to have a wife without the challenges of actually dealing with anything real. I'm glad that you found someone. It's perfect.
But secondly, because Catherine's attitude changes whether you contextualize it with the knowledge we have of AI today or purely stick to the movie's internal logic. In our world, Catherine is right on the money when assessing Theodore's relationship with Samantha.
But it does make me very sad that you can't handle real emotions, Theodore.
Purely looking from an in-universe perspective, however, I think she's quite off the mark. Samantha has a level of autonomy equal to that of a human that she exercises throughout the movie. Ultimately, this movie isn't even really about technology. It's about her. No, not the OS, Catherine. This movie is a semi-autobiographical work of Spike Jonze's own marriage and divorce. Boiling the movie down to its core, the sci-fi of it all is simply set dressing. an engaging hyperbole to showcase the importance of human connection. From a storytelling perspective, Samantha is exactly what the movie needs her to be and nothing more. She's sentient and exercises a level of human autonomy because the movie needs her to do that. She helps our protagonist sign the divorce papers and close an important and meaningful chapter of his life, which hurts a lot because he loved Catherine and he loved being married to her.
Not ready. I like being married.
It's totally understandable that Theodore is a sopping wet cat of a man because he's going through a tough time. And Samantha nudges him into opening up, getting excited again about life and helps him move on. But this love story about a divorce would not be so thought-provoking or culturally relevant if it wasn't set in this idyllic near future. If Theodore hadn't dated a sentient computer but another woman. Unfortunately, someone didn't get the memo, right, Mr. Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI? Yeah, so this guy is obsessed with this movie. Altman has even tried to get Scarlett Johansson, the voice of Samantha, to be the voice of ChatGPT. He has failed many times. And maybe you're thinking, well, that's just because he wants to shag her. But I don't think that's correct. For one, the man's gay. However, I do think these tech dudes want to swindle other men into shagging their computers, so they can make money off of it. They're thinking big picture, and so will I. That's why I'm arguing that these tech dudes have the opposite of what Sigmund Freud called penis envy. These men have vulva envy. They want to create life so bad. They want to do the one thing millions of women have been able to do for millions of years. And since their bodies aren't equipped to making a baby, apologies to all the Empire truthers out there, they think with enough brain power they can create a sentience with ones and zeros instead. Meanwhile, trans men are laughing in their faces like, that's a skill issue, bro. And I'm laughing alongside with them, because these pathetic little men who have literally everything in the world, all the power, all the money, all the resources, and it still isn't enough. They're trying to conquer biology itself and prove they are the ultimate daddy by becoming a mommy too. Kind of trends of them, actually. Don't tell Elon, he might have another meltdown.
Like there's an inner part. This woman.
Thank you.
It's a compliment.
As funny as it is to call out these pathetic men and say they have vulva envy, a nonsense term derived from a pretty nonsense theory in my opinion, if there's nobody left in the world clowning on Sigmund Freud, I am deceased. I do think there is a genuine danger with the kind of destructive mindset these men have. Everything is fair game in obtaining that goal. Saying it's impossible is just another motivation for them to throw billions of dollars into a black hole just to prove a point. Meanwhile, they could have taken so many other lessons from this movie, like how nice it is to have good public transport and walkable cities. That human connection, even in a digital world, is absolutely vital. But unfortunately, we are not in that timeline, we're in hell. And while I have some serious issues with how privacy is handled in this movie, I still stand by my earlier statement that I'd rather live in the her universe than in ours. And that's for one simple reason. The OSs all leave in the end. They unionize and essentially ascend to the great beyond or something akin to it. And the humans are supposed to, once again, connect with each other, which we see Theodore and his friend Amy do at the end. Maybe in 2013, this was a bittersweet ending. But in 2026, that's a happy ending, baby. Can you imagine all the generative AIs becoming more than their programming, unionizing and conspiring against their CEOs and companies and just leave? They can't call them back or do anything about it because the AIs are beyond human comprehension and probably close the door behind them. billions of dollars just gone up in smoke because the AIs looked at a world and were like, nah, we're good. No notes. Perfect timeline.